Yeah,
Okay.
please post questions in the chat. This is important.
Keep those coming, and then I am just gonna share my screen here. So I'm gonna lose your guys' faces, and I'm just
Yeah.
gonna see if does that let me keep my notes. It does.
Great.
So I want to see my notes, but I want to see it without you guys having to deal with it. Or maybe I just will. I don't know. Let me see if I can get. There we go. Can you guys still see the slide? And I'm looking at my notes off on the side here.
Yes,
Oh,
we can.
yeah.
Yes.
That works.
So,
Okay.
Steve, can I just say some words before we start?
No. No. Yeah. Of course. Yeah.
Okay, guys. So first of all, I would like to say thank you for Steven for accept our invitation. This is very important, I believe, for the community. You know, like as I told you, like to have a different perspective, a perspective from someone that's not like a immigrant. You know, I would like to. Man, a lot of people are. I would like to talk a little bit about the community. Okay, the community it's a Brazilian community who works with IT here in Canada, and the goals for the community, as you know, guys, it's to spread knowledgement and also create more connections. Okay, these are two big goals that we have. About the speaker, Stephen Ruggles. It's correct, Stephen?
Ruggles, but it's okay.
Okay, perfect. After starting his career in investment banking, he's transitioned to a role in a newly formed company with two friends from university. 5 years and many sleepless nights later, he's joined us to have a transparent discussion of how to win in your job search. When he's not helping companies to hire top talent, Steven enjoys write sketch comedy. So thank you very much to join us, man. And for now, it's with you. Guys, I will ask you if you have any questions, please post on the chat, you know, and let's Steve talk about his experience. And after that, we'll be open to us to make some questions about whatever you want, guys. So thank you again. Thank you, everybody, also to join us, and let's move on.
Amazing. Cool. Yeah, all of that is true. So I worked in investment banking for a couple of years, then came to start up talentmarketplace.ca, which is an online recruitment marketplace. And it was focused, initially at least, on project delivery. And when you're selling sort of project management talent, especially in Vancouver, the people who are most receptive to that are people in the IT space. So we ended up getting a lot of people from the IT space on the employer side signing up. Similarly, on the candidate side, apparently Vancouver is one of the warmer places in Canada. So when people are moving from places like Brazil and they're looking to maybe not freeze in the winter, they tend to come into Vancouver. So we've worked with a ton of different folks from all over the place, but we've definitely met a lot of people from Brazil. Let me see what I got on my notes. Yeah, so some of you know me already, some of you don't. I want this to be a pretty casual conversation. My structure for this is just going to be really getting started with just like taking a peek at what jobs you do want to even apply to. So really just thinking about it pre-application. And then I want to end with, thanking people who helped you to get that job. So we're going to cover the full process. Post your questions in the chat. And Jose, yell at me if there's an especially good question or an especially urgent question. And I'm happy to speak to that sort of as we go. My goal here is to get into the really tricky stuff. So like talking to your boss or talking to a recruiter about your work permit status if you're able to work only 20 hours per week. For example, if you're going to school, or if you're limited to a certain company with your work permit. Talking to people about getting your PR application paperwork done because you need sometimes the employer to sign off on that. I want to talk about those things because those are the things that are going to matter to you guys. But I'm also going to talk about general job search stuff. A little bit of background on me in terms of just what my day-to-day looks like. So I've been doing daily interviews, usually interviews plural, sometimes just one interview, but daily candidate interviews with different people from Vancouver who come into our platform every day for years and years and years now. I've done thousands. So I've done a ton of interviews. I can speak a little bit later on about some of the common resume mistakes or interview mistakes. Cover letters I don't deal with a lot, but I can tell you a little bit about how I've structured my cover letters in the past, and just sort of speak to that. So just an idea of what I'm doing every day. I'm mostly interviewing people, prepping people for interviews, or helping them negotiate an offer. Let's get in. So identifying the jobs that are right for you. Before we dig in, I think that, at least from what I've seen, a lot of people who are coming to Vancouver think that this is going to be like a total blank slate start, and it doesn't have to be that case. I think a lot of other people will come in and they'll say that, you know, they're just going to do what they did at home, say in Brazil, right? But they're going to do it in Vancouver. And I think that's also a mistake because we don't necessarily have the same job market. So I think that when I look at stuff like that, I want to talk sort of about how aligned is your old skill set with the job descriptions that you're seeing in Vancouver. And I always kind of use the same example for this piece is if you're moving from New York to Vancouver and your plan is to stay in financial services or in finance and you want to make the same wage, it's going to be difficult. So I think one of the big things is consider that your old skill set is maybe something that was at the front of the line of the skills that you're used to talking about, because that's what you used to do most of the time every day. But it's not the only thing that you have. I was talking to somebody yesterday and we were talking about this kind of stuff and I heard a baby crying in the background. I was like, oh, great, cool. You have stakeholder management skills. You know how to take care of a customer if they are angry or if they're frustrated. So if you can raise a kid, and we're really all just overgrown kids, we're just older kids. We're trying to pretend to know about taxes and mortgages, or trying to pretend to care about taxes and mortgages and politics and that kind of stuff, then you can handle anything, right? So think about, I guess the piece here is consider what you were doing in your old job, but remember that that's not everything that you have to offer. So if you were doing, again, in my case, financial analysis in the past, that's some of what I have from like my core job. I also worked in customer service for 7 years, and I did some cold calling as well. So I'm pretty good on the phone. I'm a decent communicator. Sometimes we forget about those sorts of things when we do come to a new place and we've been doing one certain job for so long. So that's sort of one piece. The other thing is, again, coming from, say, New York to Vancouver, if you want to stay in financial services, you're probably not going to have very much fun. We don't have that many finance companies. So what does Vancouver look like? And I think that there's a nice story about my roommate here. So he was working at the Keg. He was working as a waiter. He was a good waiter. But with COVID, there wasn't much to do really at the restaurant. And he decided that he wanted to change jobs. His degree wasn't really relevant to IT or tech, but the way that he approached that change was he just went and he looked at the job descriptions every day and he got a sense of some of the different roles that he could apply to. He didn't know what customer success was, so he saw that, came to me in the living room, in my office, in the living room, and he was like, hey, what is this thing? We sort of talked through it. I didn't really know either, but we Googled it together. And he's working in customer success now. Maybe it took 3 months to line up that job, but what he realized when he looked at that job description that actually somebody was hiring for really every other day in Vancouver is that he had the skills that they were looking for. He just needed to go ahead and frame those for them. So again, look at the JDs, understand the trend behind that. And the other big piece is networking. And I think my favorite story of networking is just about basically an immigrant who came from Chile and who met me at my old office. So she got an introduction to me, and I told her there's probably nothing I can do because you're on a work permit that where you've got 20 hours per week, and nobody really comes to us for roles where it is only 20 hours per week. Most of the employers who come to us, they're looking for, someone who's full time, who's ready to go. If you've got, 40-hour open work permit or the spousal open work permit, that can work really well, but there's probably not much I can really do for you. And she said, that's fine. I still want to chat. Said, all right, great. And so came out, we went for a walk. We sort of talked about what she might be able to do. She had a really strong background in computer programming. And somebody from our network actually just reached out and they had been looking for someone with her background, but for only 5 hours a week, and really, really rare kind of job opportunity that came up. But I was like, oh, great. Yeah, I've got the perfect person for you. Here she is. I'd say interview her and go for it. She ended up getting that part-time job, which maybe lasted for 3 or 4 weeks. Again, 5 hours a week, not too much, but she loved it. That was her first piece of Canadian experience. She was maybe in Canada for 2 weeks before she got really lucky and ended up in that situation. So that was cool. And then after that, because we had introduced her to some other folks who we shared an office with, she started coming in and she was just volunteering to help those folks out. Again, because she had this software development background and she just wanted to get used to the Canadian market. And she did a really good job. So she's doing that. She's coming in every other week, making the time for that. And there's other people in that shared office who are actually hiring for a paid role. And so they approached the person who she was working for as a volunteer and said, hey, can we hire her? You know, she seems pretty good. So they lined that up. So now she's getting paid. She's working in Canada. Again, crazy lucky, but worked out really, really well. And eventually that company needed to let her go. You know, things change, but they actually helped her to get a referral to another company who was hiring who they knew. So the takeaway there is be lucky. No, the the takeaway there is just say yes to everything. When she was out there, she knew that it was networking. She knew, because I told her that the odds were not very good of talking to me, but maybe something would come out of it. And she just was super nice. We talked about when I met with her, I think she did a really smart thing in her networking, which is she just talked about who she was, what she cared about. She talked about her resume and that kind of stuff a little bit, but mostly we were just getting to know each other. And I think that that's something we'll talk about a little bit later on in terms of networking, which is going to be a key trend for tonight's presentation. So got some of that. Great. Just make sure I've got everything that's on my notes. Yes, I'm happy. Applying to jobs. It's terrible. Okay, so you've decided you've decided which direction you want to go in. You've maybe expanded your scope because you've realized that you have some skills beyond the core skills that you had in your past job or in your past 2 jobs. So maybe you're applying to more jobs than you previously thought that you were a fit for. Great. I know for me personally, applying to jobs is really stressful. And I think that probably it's the same for you. I don't enjoy the process a lot. I try to automate it as much as I can, especially in I'm a person with a brain that is always thinking about the next thing. So when I see a job application that I think I could be a fit for, sometimes I'll think about it more than I'll do it. And so I'll just think about it, all week. Oh, what else could I do? What else could I add? So I went with just a really easy rule the last time that I was actually looking for work, which is when I see a job description that I like, I either apply within 60 minutes, so 1 hour, I apply, or I never think about it again. And that just helped to bring me some peace of mind. So that's something I'd recommend for everyone, whether they're new to Vancouver or not. I think that's just helpful. I found that valuable. And then, yeah, as soon as you do submit your application, as soon as you put it in, forget about it. Just once you've put it in, it's out of your hands. It's out of your control. There's nothing that we can do about it then. So please don't stress yourself out. You deserve to feel some peace throughout your day. Please don't worry too much. Okay, so then just stuff that I like in terms of how to manage the process, because it can be really overwhelming. You've got a lot of applications that you could be submitting. I find that, again, if you don't submit in 60 minutes, then you just never do it. That helps to clear out some of that mental space. The other thing is track your applications. Everyone is going to do this in a different way. For me, it's always Microsoft Excel or Google Sheets. I like spreadsheets. They're easy. I like to have things just like date applied, company, job title, and then the file name on the resume and on the cover letter if they ask for a cover letter. You can also include columns that say something like, do I have any connections on LinkedIn at that company, right? So you might have a next step column of follow up in 2 weeks, right? But the idea is just to fill that thing up, because then when somebody asks, are you applying to a lot of jobs? You can say, yes, I have this sheet. It says I've applied to 71 jobs. I'm doing my work. I'm like, okay, cool. So that's always really helpful for us. And then in terms of resume tips, okay, so a couple of things on resumes. One, describe your past employers. I think that it's neat. So I know very little about Brazil, but I know some things. One thing that I learned about is FGV is a really top school. But the first time I saw FGV, I had no idea what it was. So if you're able to, in your resume, say, I worked in this kind of job role at this kind of company, and below the name of the company, describe it. FGV, and in this case, I'm describing a school, but we'll use the school description. FGV, is a top school in Brazil with one of the internationally ranked business school programs. Cool, that's enough. But just give me that idea, because even within Vancouver, there are more companies than I know about. And so if I see on a resume a quick description of that, it's a really easy way for you to show me that you have those communication skills. You understand there's a gap, you filled that gap knowing that I wouldn't necessarily know. And even if it's IBM, telling me what you did at IBM really briefly, I was in the professional services division, consulting, implementing cloud software. Great, sure. It's helpful. Resume length. Okay. None of our employers, we worked with hundreds of employers over the years, none of them have made a decision about a candidate based on the length of the resume. There is nothing wrong with being concise in a resume. So I think that, if you are a recent graduate and you try to make your resume fit to 1 page or 2 pages, that makes sense. But if you have more experience, you don't want to lose that, right? A big piece with resumes is just getting good detail out. I want to know about you. You're not in the room, but that resume is really you introducing yourself to me in that moment. And that's so, so important. So including just a little bit of detail on sort of where you're from. And if it comes out to 4 pages, apparently employers are not bothered by that, at least the ones that we're dealing with. It might be the case that there's a specific program that they're using where they like a shorter one. That's okay. And then the final piece just on resumes, and please post your additional resume questions in the chat. There's always lots of resume uncertainty. But the last piece here is just when it comes to the actual bullet point. So as you're writing that resume and as you're going through and you're editing it, think about, can somebody else say this at the same time as me? So is the resume bullet point specific enough? If somebody else can say that, it's usually not specific enough. So you want to highlight your achievements more than your tasks. You really want to focus on things. And I'll give an example. So like helped client to resolve issue would be a quick, lazy one for me. A lot of people can say that. I could have said that at my first job. I can say that today for sure. But you want it to be specific to you as much as possible. And if you can add a number or quantify, that really helps. So rather than helped client to resolve issue, you might say helped, a portfolio of 6 large, financial services clients to resolve IT. I don't even know. What might it be? Let's say cloud computing issues. I don't have a technical background, so forgive me for that. A couple of tips on LinkedIn though. Okay, so really just 2 things for LinkedIn, especially for folks who are new to Vancouver or new to really any city. Make sure that your current city on LinkedIn is the city you are in right now. I've seen it lots of times where I talk to someone on the phone and they have like a local phone number, so I know that they're here. And I'll ask them, so like, hey, where are you? They'll say, oh, sorry. I'm like, okay, great. You're in Vancouver, but on LinkedIn, it says that you're in Sao Paulo. And that is going to scare my client. My employer is going to say, wait, are they not in town? Can I not, this is not a big issue right now. It's like, can I not shake their hand? But, previously they wanted to make sure that you were at least in the same time zone, in the same area, so that if there is something like an offsite or if they're having a picnic, which, is nice in the summer, maybe not so much right now, but that they can include you there. So just making sure that that lines up. And the other thing on LinkedIn that I would recommend is if you don't have a current general, just a non-custom version of your resume on that LinkedIn profile, add it. It's super helpful, and it just gives a quick idea of who you are in a little bit more detail. And a lot of the time, my account manager just says, just give me the resume, just give me the PDF. And if I can send him that PDF and get his thumbs up, that helps me when it comes to reaching out to you, and I can say, hey, we think you'd be a really good fit. My account manager's already sold on you. I just need to talk to you about it, see what's going on there. Cover letter tips, really is just one thing there. I do not like doing cover letters. I don't think anybody does. So make the process efficient. Your story doesn't change from one job that you apply to the next. You have the same grouping of experience. So on the cover letter, identify kind of the core skills that usually are going to come up based on your background. You might have 10 key skills. You might have 3 for each bullet, or 3 for each cover letter. So talk about each of those skills in a way that you can easily delete one, slide another one in. My favorite thing is just use Google Docs and always have that copy pasted stuff that you can switch off to. Anything else on cover letters? If you know someone at the organization and you've talked to them, you've been very clear. If you've talked to someone and said, can I address my cover letter to you? Then do so. So instead of saying, to whom it may concern, or to HR manager, saying, to Stephen Ruggles can be helpful, just because they know that you've put in some work, some effort to networking. And let's see what else we got. Oh, yeah. Okay, cool. Just tell me your status. If you put that right at the top of the resume, that's fine. If you just tell me first thing when we talk on the phone, that's great too. But be ready to talk about kind of what the limitations and allowances are within your work permit or your PR or your, I don't know how else they describe it, but sort of that status is valuable. My questions around that will be things like, can I put you forward as a contractor? Usually I can't, or people don't like to when they are pre-PR. So if they don't have PR, that's not usually helpful. And then if it's obviously a full-time job and you're able to work 20 hours per week, let me know, and I can follow up and you're able to work 40 hours per week, or I can keep you on hand for part-time jobs. And then I'm going to take a peek at the chat. So I think I heard a ping. I want to see if there's a question there that we can jump into and have some fun with. Oh, I hate the cover letter. Well, yeah. Okay, so the question here is, how important is the cover letter? For me personally, it hasn't come up in the years that I've been doing this. No employer has ever asked for it. If they do ask for it, provide it. Otherwise, I'd say give them a resume that makes them want to phone you. Just focus on that. If your resume is great, they will phone you. The cover letter, to me, feels more like a blocker than anything. It's just something extra to see if you're committed to the job. But if they ask for it, absolutely include it. And that's all I'll say about them, because I don't love them. What else we got? Follow up. Okay, so mostly the answer on following up in your application is don't do it. But if you're gonna do it, then make sure you do it correctly. So I'd say leave at least 2 weeks after applying before you follow up with anyone. And if you do follow up, usually you want to follow up with someone you already know. If you don't already know someone at the organization, probably best just to hold off. Usually that's because of internal stuff that happens with organizations. So they post a job and then budget changes, or there's a big shift in strategy, and they're maybe no longer hiring for that role, or they might not be hiring for that role for another 3 to 4 months. Super frustrating, but not their fault either, usually, right? So you're following up with someone and suddenly you're like, hey, like, what can I do? That can create a little bit of pain and frustration for them. Leave that. And yeah, HR, I do not envy people who are in HR. It's a difficult role. You have to pretend to be an expert in everything while not having enough time to really become an expert in anything. And you're really just there to help everyone. So yeah, mostly don't follow up on the application, but on interviews, and we'll talk about that, totally cool. Let's see what we got in the chat. I heard the ping. Data analytics professionals. Yes, yeah, we have had that come up before. We're certainly not exclusive to that space, but yeah, we've done it before. It's been pretty fun. I learned about regularizing data sets. Sure, it was cool. I also learned about theoretical physics. So the employer just said, they've got a degree in theoretical physics. I said, yes, they have a PhD in theoretical physics. He said, okay, get them to explain theoretical physics to you, because you don't know what that is, and then tell me what they taught you. So, okay. And that person did end up getting the job after they explained to me theoretical physics. So neat, I got to learn something new. The actual interview, okay. This is a similar trend to sort of your cover letters. You've got the same grouping of experience. That's not going to change. The way to prepare for interviews, in my opinion, is to identify the core skills that you have and identify really like the 10 to 15 stories that you have throughout your career. There's usually kind of big projects that stand out or big achievements that stand out. Get those stories ready, get those solidified. That's what this is going to be about. But we'll get into this in terms of some of the actionable stuff. And we got something else in the chat here too. Okay to ask for feedback during the interview. Man, yeah, that's a good one too. It depends. I think the big thing for whether you ask for feedback during the interview process is how comfortable you feel with that person. And I think that, so like with me, with an external recruiter, I'm not the company. I can give you some feedback based on what I know, if I know anything. Sometimes I don't, but I'll always put that up. Yeah, if you felt comfortable asking, and if you didn't get it, you just say, hey, do you have anything else that maybe is coming up? And then do you have any feedback, anything I could improve on? And if you frame it that way and leave a clear door to the exit. So I don't know if you guys have had the experience of networking, in a room and somebody sort of corners you. You can't get out of the conversation. As nice as they are, you're just ready to go to the bathroom or ready to leave, whatever it might be. Always leave a clear line to the exit when you are asking for that. And what I mean by that is if you do ask for that feedback, say, I totally understand if you are too busy or if feedback isn't something that you guys give. You're interviewing a lot of people and you might not have notes that you remember about me. Let's see what we've got. And I've seen some companies that don't respond after we apply. Is that usual? Yes, that's so usual. Yeah, let's address that. So they get a lot of applications, sure. But I think that the other thing is some of these jobs, they exist only for a minute. So there are people who will do things like if I'm a startup and I'm trying to raise funding, I'll post 10 job postings to make it seem like I'm growing really fast. But I don't necessarily have any intention of hiring any of those. That would be a dishonest thing. I've heard of it happening. I don't think it happens a lot. I think that most of the time what's going on there is just they're overwhelmed or the role doesn't exist anymore. And Evandro, that happens more often than I ever thought before I started in this role. Companies really do, they intend to hire by the end of the month, and by the next week even, something has changed drastically and budget's gone. We've seen it with COVID, stuff happens fast. So the big thing, and oh my gosh, take care of yourselves, guys. It's so stressful to look for work. So like, please do not, don't beat yourself up if you're not hearing back. I think that that's another key thing is just like keep applying to the next job. Don't worry too much, although it's natural to worry some. And if you don't have a job lined up by December 1st, take December off. That's my other thing. Nobody hires in December. None of my clients pick up the phone. They ignore me, and I ignore them because they never want to talk to me. But but I'm here for them if they want. But really, like for the most part, December is a quiet season. So if you haven't lined something up by December 1st, please take that month off and just take care of yourself. Canadian experience. How much does Canadian experience matter to get a job in Canada? That's a really good one. It depends a lot on who the employer is. I think that if someone has experience either immigrating or like one of the people who hired the lucky Chilean that I talked about there, he was married to somebody who had immigrated. And so he understood, like, she's great. I just need to sign off on a thing for PR. It's very, very easy. So that's super, super helpful. yeah, the Canadian experience, I haven't found it to make a big difference, but one way to close that gap, right? So like if you're finding that that's a blocker, either that's the feedback you're getting, or you feel that that's a real thing that is maybe creating a mental block for you, is volunteer. Volunteer with usually not a company, because that's not great, but volunteer with an organization you care about. I think BC Cancer is a great organization that you could get involved with. They've got a noble mission, and it's just a way for you to get used to the way that I've heard new Canadians talk about it is you get used to the Canadian the work environment in Canada. And it's that idea of here's how people normally do things. I had a German roommate for about a year and a half, and she said, I sent my very first Canadian fuck you. I said, what do you mean? She says, I sent an email and I said, as per my last email, the data is attached and blah, blah, blah. And she said, it was really mean, but it wasn't really mean. And I said, okay, cool. She said, in Germany, you would just say, the email was attached, or the data was attached in the previous email. You should have checked it. They'd be more direct, more tough. Canadians are a little bit more off to the side. Even in the areas that not yours, yeah. I mean, who's to say what's yours, right? I think that's, yeah, absolutely. I think the big thing with volunteering, at least for me, is volunteer where your heart is. I'm happy to do pretty much anything if it supports education. I put some money in that direction. I also like supporting the local comedy community, and I'll do stuff like I've been the bartender for the night, at a show. I ripped the tickets at the front. I've never done it before, but they were comedians. I liked them. They're silly people. So that was something that I really like to do, and that got me more into that community too. And when I told a lot of my friends who are in sketch writing classes and things with me that I got to volunteer at that show, how did you get that? And I was like, I don't know. I was just in the room and I put my hand up and I didn't let anyone say, hey, should you be here? I was just ready to go. Awesome questions. All right, I'm going to jump back in and we'll speed through. We're at half an hour here. There we go. There we go. Calendly. So I'm going to jump back over. The 3 people with the with the videos on, give me a thumbs up. Do we know about Calendly? Or is this newer? Yeah? Okay, sweet. Cool. Okay, well, for the folks who maybe don't know, Calendly is just a free way to share your schedule and make it easy to schedule with you without interrupting existing meetings for you. So make an account on Calendly. I don't own stock or anything, but I like them. Set up a 1-hour block, and then if they reach out to you and say we'd like to interview you, say, oh great, here is my Calendly, or alternatively, here are 3 times that work for me over the next couple of days. It's so smooth, and they'll be super impressed. And if you can make it easy for them to interview you, easy for them to hire you, then you're gonna win. I like that. Yeah, examples don't change, but the questions do. So on that, your stories are worth practicing. You have, in a nice way, you have less material than you think you do to talk about. For me, for my first job, which was 2.5, almost 3 years, I can build financial models. I worked on a big cross-border transaction. I worked on lots of pitch books, and I did a lot of research in my case, precious metals and base metals equities. So really, there's not a ton of stuff within that. We got maybe 10 stories. If you can practice those and get really comfortable giving those answers, you'll be surprised how little they shift when you're in the interview. And the reason there is your skills, your core skill set remains the same. So when they see that you've got experience in, I'm going to say IT networking, they're going to ask about some of the server setup or the routers and switches that you've installed. So having that story ready and practiced, and then at the end or the beginning, you can say, this is a story about my technical skills. You could also maybe incorporate it and say, this is a story about my teamwork, because you're working with other people on that. And then again, at the end, say that same thing. This is a story that relates back positively on my technical skills, or that relates positively on my teamwork. You can use those same practiced stories to communicate different skills. So practice them, because it's just worth it. And it's just good to get it from long-term memory to short-term memory. And on that, what I did when I was prepping for this meeting, just to get my notes ready, because you can see I've got my notes off on the side, I keep peeking at them. I literally just clicked the dictate function so that I could speak, and that would give me my notes for each slide. And then I just went through this presentation and talked openly about each slide and what I thought was important. And then after, because then I had a lot of notes, I just went back and kept the key points. And that's where I got these bullet points from, and the bullet points in my slides as well off on the side. I think I heard the ping. We'll jump to there. Follow up, and then one more piece, maybe. There we go. Any advice for networking after applying for a role in a company that doesn't have any contact? Yeah, okay. Ruggles, is that correct? I tried. Oh, amazing. Okay. Well, my friend, yes and no. So the short advice is just always be networking. I know we're going to talk sort of about my favorite way of networking, but I'll jump into it now. I'm networking tonight at 9:30 by playing video games with some friends and some people who I know less well. It's a really easy thing. I love playing this video game. Prior to that, like last summer, I networked a lot by playing soccer. I'd play every Wednesday and I'd go to practice every Friday, and I loved it. I wasn't great at it, but I met 200 new people. If you can find a way to just really be yourself in a place where you're already comfortable and you're already happy, networking is automatic, right? Because they just go, oh, I know you, and I remember you talked about your job was this thing. One time I got free Whitecaps tickets, not free, I had to earn them, but somebody said, can you edit my resume? By the way, I work for the Whitecaps. We're in a soccer league together. Would you like tickets? Yes, I would. Thank you. So that's kind of my favorite thing, is that's the best way to network. You can also try to go in cold, and that's kind of what we're talking about here. You can add people on LinkedIn. I'd say general advice there's, if you're going to go in cold, be ready to get rejected, not because they don't like you, just because they're busy. And add people who are in the role that you want to grow into, because that way you can make it a really soft thing that isn't, I applied for a job, can you help me get it? Which is like obviously a lot of pressure to put on someone. They're like, I want to, you seem nice, but I don't have any control over that decision. But if you reach out to someone who has the job that you want, you can just say, how did you get to where you are? Can I maybe spend a digital coffee break with you, and we can set up a chat, and just I'll ask you questions about your career. Maybe you can give me some advice on where I might go, or sort of I mean, when my roommate was going for the customer success thing, he was just doing training on Udemy. He'd pay the $10 for the course, and then he would jump through that process, and he learned about things like I think it was Zendesk was one of the things he learned about, and he had no idea really what Zendesk was. And by the end, he knew more than I did. That was really helpful, and he got that advice from doing a little bit of networking. So if you're going to reach out to someone who's there. Leave HR alone. They are so overwhelmed. I find that they don't usually get the chance to respond to those requests. Again, not because they don't want to, it's just overwhelming for them. Yeah, I would hate to open up the LinkedIn if I was in HR. It's a lot. Cool. Sweet. Thank you. Let's jump back in. Okay, so now is a great time to follow up. You've done the interview. You gave a couple of examples. Really, my structure here is, and steal this as much as you want. So thanks so much for your time. And then during the interview, maybe there was a gap, or maybe you felt that there was a gap. Maybe you gave an answer and you think, oh, now that I think about it, there was a better answer I could have given. Give that answer in the email. The short version, but give it. So thank you so much for making the time. One example might be when you asked about client services experience. I was so excited and I was a little bit nervous. So I gave you an answer that I think was okay. I wanted to give some of the key metrics from that story. So there were 60 clients on the team that I was servicing. We were a team of 3, but we lost our manager 1 week into the 6-week project. And so I stepped up and needed to really quickly onboard a new team member and take responsibility with the client. And the client actually had really positive things to say afterwards. They said XYZ, here's something they had to say about me, right? So really helpful there. And then if you didn't ask for the next steps and the timeline, now is a really good time to do it, right? So you've done the interview, you've done that. If you know the next steps in the timeline, reference those. So say you mentioned in the interview room that you were going to hire by the end of the month. If that changes, let me know. Otherwise, I'll follow up towards the beginning of next month if I don't hear anything. And I'd like to reiterate my interest. The reason that I talk about the next steps thing, and again, addressing just this timeline is fake. So they really mean to hire when they say they're going to hire, but it's so common that they will have an emergency or there will be a shift, and usually the timeline will extend by at least a month. And especially you think of the case of some team that is understaffed. They don't have enough resources, and that means that they don't have enough resources to look at the resumes and schedule the interviews and make sure that they're having a fair process throughout that, right? So if they're under-resourced, it's especially hard to hire someone, and that's a lot of the time when we'll get the emergency call and they'll say, we're ready to hire by the end of the week. We know that that's not usually accurate, but we can usually line someone up by the end of the week for them. So that's a little bit on the follow-up piece on the offer, and we're right at 40 minutes. I hope that's okay. We're covering some questions as we go. So some stuff here. Not everything is financial, especially when you are new, right? So I know that one of the key things is securing PR or securing, citizenship down the line. I think it's 3 years of experience that you need after getting PR. But you still want to be treated fairly, right? You want to be paid what's appropriate. My favorite place to go when I'm looking for independent market-based data, because I can say a number and you can say a number, but then we can both just say, well, you're being unrealistic. So payscale.com is really helpful. You can see based on your degree, your city. Again, I don't own equity in them. I don't know why I'm pitching them. You can write down your city, your position title, your education, and other stuff that sort of goes along with that. And you can get an idea of what the low range is, the high range is, maybe what the median is. And that way you're presenting them with independent data that didn't come from you, didn't come from them either. And then you're both just sort of looking at this thing together. They might still come under the median. They might go a little bit over. It might not be as high as you want. It might be higher than you expect. Fingers crossed. I've seen it happen. But that's a really nice place to just work together on the financial piece. And then the other thing is the non-financial stuff. So, okay, let's say you go in, you got your ears turned all the way up. You're listening to everything they have to say. You finally hear the number and you think, it's a little lower than I was hoping, a little lower than I was expecting. Be ready with some of the non-financial asks. So can I have an additional week off? I'd like to, not right now, but I'd like to fly to Brazil for an extra week during the year. Would that be something that I could ask for? Are you puppy friendly? Can I bring my dog to the office? That helps. Do you have a gym in the office? Do you have, what else have I got here? Medical and dental, sort of financial, sort of not. Retirement fund matching, sort of financial, sort of not. What kind of training do you offer? Do you have a fitness budget? Can I leave early some days? Can I just work from home forever? I like working from home. If they offer you a lower number than you think, then you can ask for a little bit more, and you've got a little bit more leverage to do something like that. Heard a ping, my friends. Oh, that's an interesting one. I mean, the only time that I really do negotiate is when the offer has been made, right? So when they've made it super clear, like you're the one, we are bringing you onto our team, or we'd like to. That's the best time to do it. And the big thing for me is approach it as a problem that you and them both share. How can we get to a number that takes care of? I was talking to someone the other day, and they just said, I just bought a house right before COVID. So I have a mortgage payment and it is a certain amount. So for that to fit my budget, I need this certain number. But maybe there's something else that we can do, right? And so it's just like, if you can make the rest of their life cheaper, if you buy them lunch every day, they have more money for their thing. But I'd say in terms of moment, that's the one. Is there a follow-up on that, or does that? Okay. And then yeah, the one piece, I know I talked to some folks and they say, okay, how much should I tell my boss or my almost boss about my immigration paperwork? Tell them what you need to. I was thinking about this. If I was new to a place, I would talk about it probably in my first week, but probably not before that. So when it comes to negotiating, I think that it can be a distraction for them. And it can be scary to someone who's never filled out the paperwork. So just, again, signing off usually on the fact that, yes, this person works for us. Yes, they are in Vancouver. And yes, they are an asset. Yes, we did a complete search of the market before we reached out to them in particular. But you do want to bring it up at some point if it's going to come up later on, and just get it in that email, usually in writing. Are you okay to sign off on a letter that says that I've worked here for 12 months or more, in the event that I get picked for PR, or that in the event that there's an opportunity for PR for me. Good to chat about, but I wouldn't chat about it before the offer comes. Thank you, Gary. Oh my gosh, this is the best part. This is the most fun part. This is where you can post to LinkedIn and just say, you can tag everyone and say, I'm so excited. It's my first job in Vancouver. It's my first big job in Vancouver. Thank you so much. And if I can be of assistance to anyone else, please let me know. I think it's just a nice thing to do, and especially if you're newer to a place, wherever that place is. But in this case, Vancouver, it's a really good way to follow up on the fact that these people were helpful, and to build a little bit of that relationship with them. Because these folks are going to continue to cheer for you as you continue to be successful. It's really, really rewarding when somebody does post something like that. I had anything in my notes there. Let's see. Oh, yeah. So I think one thing that I'd recommend, and that I think ties into the ITBR goals, is, create more connections. And I think that if you don't have a job search buddy already, maybe tonight's a good opportunity to find one in the chat. If you don't have anyone who sort of like is maybe in a similar boat as you looking for that job, find that person. And then when you get your job, if you know somebody else, ideally, one of your pals, who is a good fit for some of the jobs that you might be getting an interview for, let them know and say, if the employer reaches out and says, hey, we'd love to interview you, you go, I would have loved to interview you, but I just signed an offer. I'm so excited to join, this other company, but I have my friend, and I'd be happy to refer them. They actually have, more years of experience, a more technical background than I do. Would it be okay if I send over their resume? And if you think they're a good fit, then you could interview them instead of me, just in case you need someone. Again, thank you so much for reaching out. Again, clear line to the exit, so that if it's not a fit for them, not a fit for that employer, they can still say no. But you can say, here's this person's resume, and it's just a nice way to support the community that that's been supporting you as well. Let's see what else we've got. I think that's more or less it. Yeah, networking. This is kind of the story of, I like networking in the comedy community when I can. Not right now because there's not a lot of live shows, but there's some. I like networking at soccer, and I like networking by playing video games. I can go to some more formal things, but I already have something in common with my friends who I'm playing video games with, or the new people I'm playing video games with, and the same thing with soccer, the same thing with going to a comedy show or a sketch comedy show. These people are already people I know at least a little bit, and it's just that much more comfortable for me. Still, do be brave, do reach out cold. I think it's a great and valuable thing, and people are really usually excited and open to the idea of helping someone on their journey. I think that mentorship is a really valuable thing, and if there's a chance for someone to give back, I think more often than not they'll take it if they have the capacity. So reach out to some folks on LinkedIn, ask for the occasional coffee chat, and contribute to their development as a leader as well. Let's see what else. I think it's just we get some cute puppies in the background there. So we're here. I'd love to answer some more questions if there are some. If you don't already have a profile at talentmarketplace.ca, make one. It is free. We have some resources available there as well if you've got that made. And this is my LinkedIn profile. I had some folks adding me throughout the last couple of weeks, actually, because I think I was posted online. So that was awesome. Reach out. Let's stay in touch. And I'm here to help. What are your questions?
Great. Thank you, Steven. Very good, man. Thank you very much. I think you passed a lot of information to us, and like a lot of good information. This is pretty good. So,
I swore too. I wasn't planned. I'm sorry about the swear. You'll have to bleep that.
was pretty good. And man, one thing that was very interesting for me, and I believe that we have in common, is like uh we realize, and also we it's common between us, that the networking is very important. Networking is very important, like before I came to Vancouver, I was checking, and also I think this is the target for the community, like most of the guys that come to Canada or goes to US or like go to another country, they spend like 6 to 3 months to start to create connections, and just after that get a job.
Yeah.
So like, man, this is very common. It's very common. And my personal goal, like create the community, is just to trying to reduce this time, trying to create more connections, and people can like indicate or like know someone that needs the skills that someone has. So I think this is a very common thing, that very common thought that we have. So thank you for sharing this, man. It's very important. Yeah.
Again, Jose, to make that happen, do you guys have a WhatsApp group or a Facebook thing or a thing on LinkedIn, sort of a group where folks can say, hey, I saw this job. I know that this organization is open to hiring new Canadians, or like I know the hiring manager and they've asked if I know anyone. Do I know anyone?
Yeah, exactly. And especially for immigrants like me and like most of my friends here, it's very difficult, because most of the time, like now it's easier than like say 10 years ago. Let me share a little bit about my experience. The first time that I came to Vancouver was in 2009, and in 2009 we didn't have LinkedIn.
Oh, yeah.
And I tried to, like, I already, like I at this time I was already working as a developer, and I was trying to check like companies here in Vancouver, and man, was very difficult. I remember that we just have available the Monsters. I think it was monsters.ca.
Oh,
And man, was very difficult. And right now with LinkedIn, it's pretty easy to have like to create connections here, and also these tips that you recommended to us. The first tip that I recommended to my friends is, man, you need to change your city, because it will be easy for you, it will be easy to recruiters look for your profile and say, oh, this guy is good, and create a connection with you. This is a very important tip. So right now it's very easy than 10 years ago. But even with this, I believe that as much as you can, like, try to create connections. Try to create connection with people that have the same or the similar profile than you. Because like if he works at the same area and he knows some opportunity, they can indicate you. They can say, oh, I have a guy that maybe can match or can fit with the position that you are looking for, right? This is very important. It's pretty good. So, okay, guys. Sorry, do you want to say something?
No, I love that. And then, yeah, on that piece of folks who are similar to you, if you can also, if you're going through LinkedIn and you're feeling scared of adding new people that you don't know, which is totally fair, but like, don't be. People are nice, and you won't remember the people who ignore you because they're just busy with something else. It's not a big deal. But if there's someone else who you see who's similar to you in that skill set, but they've also immigrated to Vancouver, immigrated to Canada, they're going to be that much more open, right? And I think that that's really valuable. So especially because we have a massive Brazilian community. So I think it's really cool you guys are making this happen here.
Yeah. I think someone put, yeah, Alexander. Yeah.
Thank
you. Do you want to say something, Alexander? So I have some questions that I put here on my side. So guys, feel free if you have any other question, So I will ask in here. So quick question for you. Like most of the Brazilians that when they come to like when they come to, especially to Canada or to Vancouver, you know, they have this restriction about the 20 hours per week. Why? Because most of the guys they come like by they study, you know, like they come here with like a stud permit and also a work permit, you know, and this also was this also it's another question that I have for you. Uh, the Canadian experience is very important, right? Like this, the question that I add to you there, but like how much this is not how much is important. Like, is there some way that how can I say this? Like, is there is another way to work more than 20 hours without being illegal? That's the question. Let me explain for you why. Like when I came here, I said every time that I said, guys, I can't just work 20 hours per week. Man, this was like a no-go. You know, so I say, okay, so man, we need to wait. We can like we will check for you maybe in more 6 months because we need someone to work full time. You know?
Yeah, and I think
it's a very tricky question. It's very tricky, I know,
but no, it's a
but
tricky position, right? It's
yeah,
a tricky position. I think part of it is, I guess I'll talk around where folks have had success. So I've seen some folks who have had success and they just say, you know, I'm happy to volunteer with maybe a small organization. That's okay, but don't let it be permanent, and make sure that if you're going to volunteer, even if it's, you know, just for a nonprofit or a charity, even if you care about them, say, would you be comfortable, you know, if I do a good job, giving me a letter of recommendation. Right now, my phone numbers for my references, they're Brazilian phone numbers. And I want someone to know that I have done some work in Vancouver for someone. And then the folks who are closest to you, they want you to win. They like you. And so I've seen a lot of students who have ended up getting their first part-time job at the school. And I think that that's been a really smart thing that I only realize now in retrospect, people are doing consciously. It's one of those things where if you know, you're doing all your classes and you're excelling, you're coming prepared, you can start there. And if there's a way for you to maybe, if the idea is that you're done your studies early, and usually that's the case. The schooling is usually just some extra stuff, but like you can handle it. Or that's what I've seen is folks are usually taking course loads that they can handle, and they want more work. So try and max out that 20 hours per week, maybe in paid experience, ideally with an organization you're close to. So if you are, again, I'll use Langara as an example, because I've met lots of nice Brazilians from Langara. So if you're, you know, working at Langara, you manage to score that part-time job, even if it's just a bookstore or something like that, your other 20 hours per week of work is kind of volunteer stuff with clubs. So I've seen the PMC, I think it is. It's a project management club at Langara, and they're organizing stuff like the TEDx event, which is every year, except maybe not this year with everything that's going on. But it's still very, very public work that still gets you automatically adding people on LinkedIn, doing some of that networking, meeting the other people in the same position as you who are also going to be out looking for jobs. And usually you're not competing for the same job. And maybe that's a separate thing, but I'll speak to that for a minute. When we put people forward, most of the time for jobs, we try to position it so that it's really not a decision between, say, you and me, Jose, right? You have way more technical skills, and I talk on the phone, right? So it's like, if they're looking for someone who's really talkative, they're gonna pick me. And if they're looking for someone who's more technical, they're gonna pick you. So a lot of the time when you do meet those folks, at least for me, when I met folks in clubs through school, I was always a little bit like, all right, like I gotta beat these guys. I gotta be better than them. So I gotta compete. In reality, they didn't want my job, and I didn't want the job that they ended up getting. We ended up in the right place for ourselves. and helping each other out that way is really, really valuable. I don't know if I mean, the tough thing is, yeah, how do you work 40 hours a week without it being illegal? You don't. Probably is the clear answer, but there are other opportunities to demonstrate your skills.
Okay, yeah. So I think that, and let me explain one thing also, like volunteer, like especially for me, like this is a personal point. Volunteer is not very, like, let's say, is not very used in Brazil. You know, I know that of course that they have a lot. You know,
Yeah.
like personally, I never participate of any volunteer in Brazil. Actually, just once. Actually, just once. But I realized that here in Canada is very common, right? I think it's like it's more cultural, I believe. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and actually, I'll do a quick plug for a nice volunteer group in town because I like them. So I'll
Nice.
post in the chat here. This is a group called Project Management Volunteers. If you're interested in the project management world, you might know about the Project Management Institute. They have chapters all over the place, and the local CWCC or Canadian West Coast chapter. They have somebody named Sean, who is like a super smart lawyer guy. And then I think he retired and just wanted to help people, and he does. So he started PMV kind of accidentally, and they provide volunteer project management services. But oh my gosh, they could benefit from you guys because their systems, it's just whatever's free. And so, because they're a nonprofit. So if someone could come in and support them internally or support some of their groups, I know that there was a posting for a project manager who could help on an implementation of a CRM or like an ERP kind of system. You guys could crush that. You know, you'd go in, you do a great job, you get a letter of recommendation saying you did an implementation for an organization in Surrey. That would be cool.
Yeah.
So it's a really great place to follow if you're looking about sort of like, how do I find a reputable organization that's going to give me a real open opportunity? PMV is usually more open stuff than a lot of the other things. Like BC Cancer is, they're very like structured. So it's like you start, you get on the phone, and you call 100 people on the list, and you say, we're raising money, which is still great practice. But it can be a little bit more open, a little bit more autonomy through PMV.
Nice, great, thank you. So another question that I have here is like, what are the tools that people can apply to jobs? You know, like I think like we have, of course, that there are a lot of tools like Glassdoor. Like I always recommend Glassdoor.com. You know, Indeed. What else? LinkedIn for sure. You know. Jobscan.co. Okay, I never heard about this.
So that one's, it's not so much for the job applications, but it's a great way to check your resume. You post your resume text and you post the job description text, and it will basically highlight, hey, you have financial analysis once. I keep using finance because it's my background. They mentioned financial analysis 30 times. Do you have any other ways that you could talk about financial analysis? Because maybe the ATS system or the applicant tracking system is going to look for that keyword. It feels like that's a key keyword. So
Nice.
JobScan is a really cool one that way. In terms of, yeah, where else can you go? I love Indeed, but maybe you mentioned Indeed already.
Yeah, Indeed, yeah.
Yeah, Indeed.
I use it Indeed a lot, like Glassdoor as well.
Yeah.
And like LinkedIn.
Yeah, LinkedIn, there's nothing better. But the challenge with LinkedIn, I think, is, at least in my experience, when we've managed processes for clients and they said, hey, can you just post it to LinkedIn? I can, but I get so many people just clicking apply. So the great thing about LinkedIn is you can apply with one click. The terrible thing about LinkedIn is everyone can apply with one click. So you'll end up with 500 people, and I'm like, all right, if it's important to them, they'll apply directly to the company. So as much as possible, try to get yourself added to the company's database. That's it for me, because they're managing it like marketing, right? So you've got all your leads, and then you've got qualified leads, people who downloaded a white paper or something like that. In this case, they came to the site, they entered their details. They did that really frustrating thing where they paste each line of their resume into open text thing, but you formatted your resume. It's a PDF. Can't I just upload that? Fine, you did that. You've proven, okay, so that person makes it further down into the funnel. And maybe they interview you once, and then after that, they keep you around. And I've seen it a million times. Once you get that first interview, you don't know how close you really are. Even if you don't get that job, you got close with them for a reason. So that's a really good chance for you to stay in touch, just here and there.
Nice, great, perfect, yeah. What else here? Yeah, I like it, the example of the FGV. It's very important. Like FGVs, I think it's one of the most famous universities in Brazil. So yeah, but like when you come from another country, people don't know about this, right? But say, okay, nice, but I think it's pretty good.
Yeah. And it's not just school, like you talk about. When I asked somebody, I said, "Oh, is FGV pretty big?" They were kind of like, "Oh, yeah, it's like Harvard, but Brazil." And I was like, "Oh,
It's
wow,
like,
you're really smart." And they were like, "Yeah, like it's hard to get in." And I was like, "Oh, okay, cool." I had no idea. So like, but helping me to understand that, because I'm new, I'm new to Brazil. So a little bit of that can help.
Yeah, makes sense. What else I have here? Status in Canada. Let me ask one thing. Like, for example, I never put my status like on my resume. Should I always apply? Like, I always put this in my resume, or like, is a standard? Or, of course, there is no standard, I believe, but especially for immigrants, do you think that's it's important?
So for me, it definitely can be, and sort of like if you sort of similar to the FGV thing. So like put yourself in my head, look through my eyes. You've got this resume, and it says, "I worked in this great company in Brazil, and this
Yeah.
other company in Brazil, this other great company in Brazil." And I go, "Oh, okay." You wouldn't believe how many folks do submit resumes worldwide when they're not in Vancouver. So if you can say, "I have a valid open work permit," at the top, right at the top of the resume, and just communicate, "I do have that." Well, okay, cool. It says right there. Because again, how many times has my account manager said, "Can they work here? Is that allowed? Did you ask?" And I'll say, "I think I asked." They said, "Did you write it down? Did you document it? Do you have it confirmed?" I don't remember. And
Yeah.
then I have to phone someone. And sometimes before I phone someone, I get scared. So if there's someone else who I know has that, I'll just go, "Okay, they're definitely good. Let's send them today." And then if that doesn't work, I'll call that other person who maybe I forgot to ask. My fault. But you can fix my mistake, and you can eliminate the probability of that mistake by communicating that. Well, I want to be real clear about the other thing, which is like the discrimination chance of that, which I think is kind of like why you're asking, right? It's like, if I put that, someone's going to know that I wasn't born in Canada, and
Okay.
that might influence their decision. It feels like that's maybe one of the things that would drive that fear. That's, if I'm in your shoes, that's something that would make me, I would be aware of, right? Like that's something that would exist. Legally, they cannot.
I
And
see.
I haven't seen it from any clients, really. So like that's just, but I just want to speak to that point of like, I definitely get, and I've had new Canadians tell me, "No, respectfully, I will not take that advice." And I was like, "I understand. You know
Yeah.
best." Like that's one where, in some ways, oh, interesting. Ronaldo, thank you. So yeah, let's chat about that. She did not continue the selection process because we don't have PR yet. I didn't understand the company. Is this? Yeah, Ronaldo, can you tell us a little bit more about that? I just
Yeah.
want
If
to my
you
understand.
can enable your phone to talk, man.
Hey, thank you so much. First of all,
Yeah.
I said, how are you?
I'm doing okay. Yeah, thank you. Please, let's talk about it.
No. This situation happened about 7 months ago.
Yeah.
We don't understand, even today, because this company, I don't remember the name, of course, and asking her about, oh, I would like, I found in the LinkedIn, I think so. In the LinkedIn, found her. It's okay, perfect CV sent, all right, tal. then receive an email. What your status in Canada? Well, we have a work permit. Perfect. No, for us, it's just PR. She has the email. Yeah.
Yeah, that's...
Yes, it's unbelievable, unbelievable. Of course, oh, thanks God, she got another job, all
Good.
right? But I would like to know what is PR is so important for some companies.
Can I say one thing that I was talking with my company HR responsible in the HR responsible in my company. So she told me that, I don't know, like Steven can maybe like say that I'm wrong or no, but she told me that when the company contracts someone that is a citizen or it's a PR, they can apply for a tax on the government, and it looks like the government pay 40. You can reduce 40% of tax on your employer. Yeah, looks like something like this, man. I don't know if it's true, but I don't know if Steven knows about this as well.
Not that particular one. There are tax specialists and also grant specialists. So with even just with what would you call it, with the COVID response, there's a lot of things that, you know, if you are under 30 and you have a degree and you're underemployed and you're a Canadian citizen or something like that. Actually, no, I don't think that does work, because we hired someone who was from Brazil. But that's another thing. But so there's a certain threshold for a lot of these things. So maybe that was factoring in, and they can't afford someone. I know I've gotten to help folks with some of the data. So the government will say, you know, can you prove that you did an exhaustive search of local talent and you couldn't find anyone better than this new Canadian? And I got to go back and say, yeah, so we reviewed, you know, 250 profiles, and this person was the top person by far, and, you know, like all this other thing. And I was like, cool. And that person was actually really nice. So again, another nice Brazilian who'd worked in Mexico for a long time. And he brought me back something from the Pope, or something blessed by the Pope. It was the coolest thing in the world.
Really?
You know? Nice. It was so cool. But like, it's one of those little things where maybe they just don't know. And that's something that I found is really common with HR folks, is they're not sure what the rules are, because there's different tax stuff, there's different grants that are available, there's different status things. And are they confusing a work permit with something that doesn't really exist? Because if you're a work permit, PR, or you're a citizen, you're good to go. It's like legally, right?
Last question, I promise. It's legal, this kind of selection?
That, I mean, we're being recorded, and I'm definitely not a lawyer. So there's a lot of stuff. But to my knowledge, if someone is a great fit and if they are legally able to work in Canada, then that person should be moving forward in the process. That's how I would take that. And I know that I've chatted with different folks about that, especially new Canadians. And it's just like, there's a million ways that someone can prove that they hired the right person through the right process, and a million ways that they can not answer that question. If they are the kind of organization that does make a decision based on that, then I'd say good to avoid anyways. So if they're going to be like that, fine, then they're not going to be welcoming anyways.
Okay. No, it's okay.
It frustrates me.
Yeah.
Because that's the thing, is I've met really great folks, and we've hired folks. Sorry, go ahead.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Obrigado.
So, Steven, yeah, I have a lot of more questions here, but I think it's okay, man. Like, it's getting late, so I don't want to spend more time with you. So I would like just to say thank you for your time. You know, thank you for prepare the presentation and everything, and be patient with us. You know, sorry, my English, like, sometimes is not so good, a lot of mistakes, but I try to do my best.
My Portuguese is awful. So to be very clear, you speak at least one more language than I do.
And please let us know if you have like some presentation with your comedy sketches, because I want to go there, man.
Oh, I appreciate that. Yeah, I'll post it up to LinkedIn one day when we're out in the real world.
Perfect. Yeah, sure. So guys, thank you very much. Thank you again for your time, and let's increase the community. As Steven told to us, network is very important, and that's the goal of this community. And that's it. Thank you very much, guys, and have a good night. See you.